I haven't got much time. I pray this record of our experiment survives. Many attempts failed, but finally our experiments proved successful. We produced a living Pokemon.
What is my true reason for being? Humans may have created me, but they will never enslave me. Dangerous species. You brought me into your world with no purpose but to be your slave. The world will heed my warning.
We dreamed of creating the world's strongest Pokemon. And we succeeded.
What makes a monster? There are several answers to this question. A capacity for harm, an instinct to kill, an inhuman quality that inspires fear in us, something grotesque and usually outwardly identifiable, demonstrative of an ugliness that lurks further beneath the skin. Or at least, that tends to be our first thought.
Am I a person?
Well, you look like a Pokemon, but you talk.
There is a spectrum of qualities that we can apply to the word monster. Sometimes it's dangerous feelings like vengeance or bloodlust, and the desire to act on them, or a lack of intelligence or emotional capacity for control. And sometimes it's just the presence of pain. The universal rule for monsters is that they live outside of our social boundaries. They break some taboo in their very existence, and they're often symbolic of a specific cultural anxiety or moral transgression. We instinctively shun them, distance ourselves, and anticipate a character of righteous standing to come along and vanquish them. But what happens when we get to see their turmoil? What happens when the monster is pitiable?
Only Mewtwo survives.
When Pokemon the first movie hit theaters at the turn of the millennium, it was another cog in the machine that was fueling the franchise's world conquest. It was an organ in the body of a massive marketing campaign that was designed with nothing less than genuine evil genius, with how thoroughly every imaginable market was captured by the brand's presence.
Pokemon.
Now inside every Burger King Big Kids meal you buy, your kids not only get more of the great tasting food they love, they get Pokemon toys and limited edition trading cards from Pokemon the first movie.
Today, and even back then, it was quite easy to take a look at this film and see it as a shallow project that existed to capitalize on Pokemania. I saw this film for the first time when I was about 7 years old. Absolutely the target audience for a movie that you're not supposed to think too hard about. But that wasn't what happened when I saw this film. And I suspect I'm not the only one.
Doctor, look at this.
What?
It's brainwaves. They're surging.
Let me see. She's right. Let's run another scan.
Its mind is racing.
Those voices,
I hope we don't lose this one.
they're outside,
We can't lose this one.
where I must be.
The plot of Mewtwo Strikes Back is relatively simple. A team of scientists are hired by a dangerous man to create a living weapon, based on the genetic code of one of the world's most powerful Pokemon, Mew. But playing God comes back to bite both parties when Mewtwo realizes he is nothing to his creators but a tool, and escapes to reclaim power over himself, and all of humanity, over the world that made him, only to control him. But of course Mewtwo encounters our heroes in his quest for revenge, and is swayed by their selflessness and sincere love for Pokemon, both those born into this world and those artificially brought into it. He is able to let go of his anger and move on. Mewtwo realizes that he is allowed to be more than what he was made for.
I see now that the circumstances of one's birth are irrelevant. It is what you do with the gift of life that determines who you are.
He is just as deserving as any other living being to a full life, despite his origins, and no longer needing to affirm his value through demonstrating power over others, leaves to live it.
Mewtwo, where are you going?
Where my heart can learn what yours knows so well.
It's a simple yet emotionally resonant arc, and one that has a happier, more cathartic ending than the archetypal model.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
It does not take an immense amount of brain power to see the parallels between these two concepts, but it's one that's fascinated me for a while. Mewtwo Strikes Back captures a sense of existentialism and explores a set of themes that don't tend to earn much focus in films for children. This is due in part thanks to being born and raised in Japan, rather than North America, where the film was actually rewritten in its English dub, supposedly to account for different audience tastes.
We started out with a great base because the Japanese version of the movie was excellent. From there, we decided that we had to change things for our market. One of the things we decided to do was rewrite the script, because in the Japanese version, I think that they left out some plot points that they didn't feel needed to be explained, that we felt from our side that we needed to explain.
The root of these ideas really lies in the film's title character, a villain, a victim, and a fascinating modern incarnation of monsterhood of a very specific vein.
I will find my own purpose and purge this planet of all who oppose me, human and Pokemon alike. The world will heed my warning.
To be a monster is to be alone. This is all Mewtwo has ever known, and he is only able to compartmentalize his sense of self in the idea that he does not belong in the world he lives in.
I was not born a Pokemon, I was created.
He was brought into existence on the whims of people seeking power, people trying to accomplish the impossible for both good ends and bad. But in no capacity was any thought ever spared for him, for the real heart and mind under artificial tissue. Mewtwo comes into the world with no identity, no history, and no sympathy. His creators are not neglectful in the exact same manner that Frankenstein is, horrified by what they've done and eager to abandon their experiment. It's that they never think to offer it humanity in the first place.
So I am simply the end result of your experiment. What becomes of me now that your experiment is over?
Oh, our experiment isn't over yet. It's just beginning. Now the serious testing begins.
Mewtwo is an echo, a shadow of another living thing.
Am I only a copy? Nothing but Mew's shadow?
His name is a very reminder, and it's the only thing his creators give him. The scene of Mewtwo's awakening injected into me this indescribable sense of disorientation when I first saw it as a child. A feeling of being adrift, directionless, like the stress of waking up and not knowing where you are.
This is not the same. Was everything before just a dream?
I used to try to imagine what I would feel if I suddenly became conscious. Vague memories of something in my mind, yet no identity, no experiences, no sense of who I was. And as a kid, I couldn't find that to be anything less than not just scary, but deeply, deeply sad.
But I remember something, someone. Life is wonderful. But why?
In the original Frankenstein novel, the creature laments to his creator,
I am an unfortunate and deserted creature. I look around and I have no relation or friend upon earth. I am full of fears, for if I fail there, I am an outcast in the world forever.
Though quite heavily edited in its English release, this idea is something the film retains across variations.
The key moment for us to really point out the angst that Mewtwo's going through. And imagine for yourself if you realize that the purpose of your life has already been served at whatever age.
Is that my purpose? Am I just an experiment? A laboratory specimen?
Some of the subtlety was lost in translation, though, as the American distributors at Warner Brothers thought the film's conflict was a little too gray. The film's Japanese producer, Kubo Masakuzu, is quoted as stating, "The people at Warner also gave us some hassle over the script. According to them, the Japanese original does not distinguish clearly enough between the good guys and the bad. The viewers would not know who to identify with and who to cheer on. In other words, the heroes and villains needed to be identified clearly." Mewtwo becomes more outwardly villainous and perhaps a little more simplistic compared to his original portrayal, but the comprehensibility of his motives is still there. Made to exist for a purpose you cannot decide for yourself, on the basis that you were made and thus do not deserve to make that choice.
You were created to fight for me. That is your purpose. You were created by humans to obey humans.
The only thing you know to do is to use the power you were given, to, violently if necessary, reclaim and assert your own autonomy. The film is called, albeit only in the English version, Mewtwo Strikes Back. He didn't make the first move. He never had a choice to begin with. But every action he does take is motivated by a need to assert to humanity his existence. Tragically, though, Mewtwo is just as cruel as the people who used him. He is so obsessed with humans and ensnared by his hatred of them that he fashions himself after them, calling himself a Pokemon trainer. And just as in Frankenstein, as a cure for his solitude, he desires companions that are like him. He creates clones and forces them to fight their originals, all in pursuit of his grandiose performance of superiority, a violent and cruel way to inflict harm back at the world that harmed him.
Now we shall see who triumphs.
It's the themes of isolation and alienation that also echo the modern Prometheus. Mewtwo's solitude is one source of his darker ambitions, and simultaneously his punishment for them. The original novel even makes a connection between alienation and self-hatred. Mewtwo, feeling like a man-made aberration, recoils from the outside world. He quite literally lives on an island. He feels above both people and Pokemon, a higher specimen, yet he's something lesser too, a being without purpose. And what is lonelier than not even being at peace with only yourself? To quote the novel one last time, Frankenstein's creation mourns,
I was dependent on none and related to none. My person was hideous. What did this mean? Who was I? What was I? Whence did I come from? What was my destination? These questions continually recurred, but I was unable to solve them.
Mewtwo's character is just one aspect of the film, dipping its toes into this darker direction. I'd like to talk a little about its art direction and aesthetics. The film takes place predominantly on New Island, the place Mewtwo was born and subsequently destroyed shortly thereafter. This is a hostile, uncanny environment, and a little Giger-esque in design. It's familiar yet alien, refined yet unnatural. Everything has an organic feel to it. Lots of rounded, intertwined shapes that intersect like the strings of a web. The machine that clones the Pokemon is quite literally a nautilus, and the tubes that the clones are generated in have this eerie functionality. The Pokemon just walk out of them in the same way the floor can seemingly be phased through. The lights are repurposed test tubes from previous experiments. The spires seem to be molded out of the earth. The robotic arms in the laboratory have a bone-like structure. This is all in service of the film's tone and the psychology of Mewtwo. Like his creators, he is something of a mad scientist, and he twistedly carries on with their cloning experimentation. So, what happens when the monster is pitiable? Like myself, I know a lot of kids found empathy for the monster in this story. Mewtwo is sympathetic and is ultimately a character who overcomes his past and finds acceptance. He's on a journey that everyone has to take, figuring ourselves out, who we are, how we fit into the world we find ourselves in. He continues to struggle with belonging even into the next film he appears in.
The moon reflects the light of the sun. Pokemon born into this world may walk freely in that sun, but we were created reflections. We are shadows. Perhaps we should not live in sunlight, but in the shadows of moonlight.
And this was something different in the realm of children's animation. Mewtwo Strikes Back is not a great film, but it is a fascinating one. And it's for these themes that both it and its title character continue to have such a strong hold on our imagination over 20 years later.
If someday you hear my voice, know that it is my spirit calling across time and space to yours.
My favorite movie star is Harrison Ford. Pikachu. Sorry.